kingdom.
Good afternoon. It's 2 p.m. Central African time, and this is Market View, your front row seat to the biggest business stories shaping Eswatini and beyond. I'm Sifiso Ngumalo, happy to be your host once again. And let's get straight into it. 17,000 smallholder farmers. That's a big number. Let me say that again. 17,000 smallholder farmers are set to benefit from a game-changing 851 million Malangeni investment in agriculture. The Smallholder Agricultural Productivity Enhancement and Marketing Project, which is backed by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, has been officially launched. But beyond the big numbers, because it's a big number, the SMEs, the numbers of them, the monies itself is a lot of money. But what does this mean beyond these numbers for the Eswatini's food security and rural economy? We will get a full sense of what that really means on our business stories today. It's going to be the first story. And then, on the other hand, government is pushing for more funding for the Mbageni Dam as talks with the African Development Bank get underway. Now, here is the multi-billion Rand Mkonvo Ngwavuma water augmentation project, which is, of course, expected to transform the Shiselweni region. But will the financing materialize? I mean, it's a lot of money. We do want to see it materialize, because if it doesn't, a lot of accounting will have to be done, and there is no pun there intended. A lot of accounting in terms of the money, as well as the accountability, the questions that we will ask in the newsrooms, as well as the whole country. And we don't want to ask those questions. We want to see these things materialize. Anyway, later on the show, market indices are under pressure. What's driving the movements, and what should investors be keeping an eye on? Economist analyst Bia joins us in studio today for a sharp analysis. All that and more right here on Market View. Let's get started. All right, 17,000 smallholder legume and vegetable farmers will benefit from the over 851 million Smallholder Agricultural Productivity Enhancement and Marketing Project, which will be implemented by the Eswatini Water and Agricultural Development Enterprise, popularly known as EWADE. Now, the project, supported by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, was launched by the Minister for Agriculture, Mandla Chauka. He launched it at the MVA building in Babane.
The project will be implemented over an 8-year period from this year until 2033. The Minister for Agriculture says the funding is 60% grant and 40% loan at very favorable terms. He says the funding has been secured with the support from the Ministry of Finance. He continues to say they are looking to secure more funding from the International Fund for Agricultural Development.
I do want to state that I think last month I visited the headquarters of IFAD to attend the Governing Council meeting, and I had a side engagement whereby we discussed the possibility of getting an additional 14.2 million US funding, which could be channeled through this fund. The process of domesticating, for lack of a better word, that money is underway. And again, it's partly grant and partly concessional loan.
The Minister for Finance, Honorable Neil Rickenberg, says the fund has come at an opportune time when the country is putting all efforts into ensuring food security.
Agriculture is the solution for our unemployment and for our poverty in Eswatini. And so really what we are doing here is in the center, in the perfect space of what we need to do to try and transform our country.
The International Fund for Agricultural Development's country director, Francesco, states the reasons they decided to fund the project.
I believe this project is extremely relevant for the development of the agricultural sector in Eswatini. If you look at the country, 70% of the population live in rural areas, and more than 70% relies their income from smallholder agricultural activities. However, smallholder farmers still face a lot of challenges and constraints. On the one hand is low productivity and production, at the same time highly reliance on rain-fed agriculture and exposure to climate change. And this is compounded by limited access to market, limited access to technologies, limited access to financial services. So this project will try to exactly tackle those challenges with a strong focus on supporting smallholder farmers, clustering them to make sure that what they produce is the right quality and quantity to meet market's demand, and contextually having a strong focus on food security and nutrition, because at the same time it is important to produce for the market, but it's important also to produce for households, for their food security and nutrition needs. So as an International Fund for Agricultural Development, we have a strong focus on supporting agriculture and rural transformation with a specific focus on small producers and smallholder farmers. So this project meets this demand, and is something that can have an impact on really the small producers and those part of farmers that are often neglected because they don't manage to access a wide range of services.
The International Fund for Agricultural Development says EWADE has a long track record of successfully implementing projects in the agriculture space, including the recently concluded smallholder market-led project supported by the organization, which was completed last year, reaching out to about 90,000 beneficiaries. This project that has been launched today will create 7,500 employment opportunities. For Market View, Nelson Ngamandla, Vuminkosi Nzinisa Mbambane.
The Minister of Agriculture has already started talks with the African Development Bank. They are in an effort to source more funding for the Mbageni Dam. This was highlighted by the Minister for Agriculture, Mandla Chauka, when giving an update on the funding of the dam. Mbageni Dam is part of the 30 billion Malangeni African Development Bank funded Mkonvongwa Vuma Water Augmentation Project. It has 2 catchment areas, and the project is designed to benefit 100,000 Emaswati, covering a total area of 30,000 hectares in addition. About 10,000 job opportunities will also be created, and local people will be targeted to benefit. The project targets 7 chiefdoms in the Shiselweni region, according to the Ministry of Finance.
We are already in a serious partnership with the African Development Bank. We will be reminded that we are in the middle of constructing what we call Mbageni Dam, which is part of the MNOP project. So the African Development Bank is the funder of that project. So we had to go there to also talk to the possibility of getting more funding as that project goes on, because we'll be aware that the project includes the construction of Mbageni Dam, and then the construction of a tunnel through the mountain on top of the dam, up to lastly would be the construction of the Temba Dam. So it's going to be a huge project that's going to take time, needing funding at various stages of its progression. Currently, we are doing the dam, and then we'll be doing a conveyancing pipe so that we are able to deliver the water within the command area. So far, we are dealing with the African Development Bank, and they've indicated interest in continuing to fund us for the subsequent stages of the project. Currently, up to this point, we are needing about 7 billion from inception up to probably the completion of the Mbagen Dam and the conveyancing system. But when we start the tunneling and the timber dam, then more funds will be required. That's why we need to start the strategic partnerships now, so that when the time arrives, we are able to get the funds quickly, because the last thing you want is to start a project and then have to stop in the middle of it because you don't have the money.
More stories on the agricultural landscape after the break. Don't go anywhere.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
All right, welcome back. A new chapter in the agricultural development has begun as the government announces the launch of the over 851 million Malangeni smallholder agricultural productivity enhancement as well as marketing project. Now, the highly anticipated project, which is aimed at revolutionizing agricultural productivity and to improve market access for smallholder farmers, is going to be implemented by the Eswatini Water and Agricultural Development Enterprise. It is supported by the International Fund for Agricultural Development. It is a project that is a major step toward strengthening the agricultural sector as well as boosting economic growth in the Kingdom of Eswatini. Our business journalist Nelson Ndlangamandla sits down with eWait's Chief Executive Officer Dr. Samson Sithole, and he shares how farmers will benefit from the project.
CEO, welcome to Market View. Thank you for joining us today. We have witnessed the launch of this project that is meant to empower smallholder farmers. Can you briefly tell us about this project?
Thanks, Nelson, and greetings to all viewers. This project, which is called SEPEM, is about production and enhancement. It covers three main components. It talks to the production and productivity at field level, and then it talks about the market, where the produce would be marketed, and it then talks to the environment upon which the two components would be executed. So basically, this means the environment, there will be an element of funding that goes to financing environmental activities that will enable the farmer to be able to produce in the most productive way and be able to market his or her produce. And the target mainly is it's around the legume crops, which are of a high value crop of late, fetching quite a substantial amount of water. of money in the market.
What is the impact of this project, CEO? How much is it going to cost, and how many farmers will benefit from it?
The coverage of the project is actually the entire country, the whole Lubombo, Eswatini, regions, Manzini, they will all be covered. The impact of the project is to empower farmers out there through improved agricultural production, and it is expected to increase the farmers' income. It is expected to contribute to employment in the country and enhance the economic development of the country. Here we're talking of, in Emalangeni terms, 851 million Emalangeni has been, will be the funding of this project, which is around $45.5 million US. In terms of farmers, I can't remember the figure quite well, but I know that the project will impact about 120,000 people in the country. Basically, that's the project.
You are talking about 851 million Emalangeni, so I'm sure a farmer at home will be excited and want to know, how do I benefit from such a project? Can you please talk to us about that?
We will do what we call smallholder farmer mobilization. There will be a number of qualifiers which qualifies people to participate in this. There will be geographic locations that we target where, if for instance it's to be irrigation component, the component has irrigation in it, then we would definitely target where there is water, and we will be able to mobilize farmers around that area who are closer to the water source and develop those farmers. Otherwise, there will also be, the project will be open to applications. If farmers decide to submit some applications as a request because they see some potential in their area, we will welcome applications, and we can then make a decision from there if those farmers do meet the qualifiers that we would have developed at that time.
I want to understand the main objectives of the project. Why such a project? Is it because you want to increase exports? What is the main goal of this project?
No, this basically is driven by the fact that we still import a lot of our vegetables, our legumes. We are also working on implementing agriculture strategy. The minister articulates the strategy very well on food security. The country is actually behind when it comes to food security. We haven't gotten anywhere closer to meeting our target. So this is supposed to come in handy with that strategy. And also the fact that the country is languishing in poverty. And the country has realized that the way out of poverty is agriculture development. And the opportunity that is there is massive in that almost all literature books in the country talks of between 60 and 70% of our population reside in the rural areas, and they are languishing in poverty. But they do have pieces of land. If you look at studies from the Ministry of Agriculture on land holding by each family out there in the rural areas. It runs around 2 hectares and above. And with that piece of land, you can do anything. And these pieces of land brought together, they constitute over 70%, if I'm not mistaken, of idle land in the country. There is very little land that is under commercial production as we speak in the country, although I forget the exact percentages, but those that are in commercial activities are very, very small. So if you introduce a project like this that will go to the people in the rural areas who have these pieces of land that when amalgamated, they would give you a sizable portion of land that can support the country with food, then you are doing the right thing. You can't go wrong if you take that route. So the government of Eswatini has basically taken that route to target the rural areas to actually deal with poverty and also hit the food security goal.
The project is starting today. What is its lifespan?
So we are beginning the project right away as it is launched today. So you can add 8 years to 2025. That will give you to 2033.
I am always interested in numbers. I love numbers, CEO. So I want to know how many farmers will benefit from such a project.
The farmers that will be involved will be able to support 120,000 people. But I think it's around 16 or 17,000 farmers that we're talking. We're talking groups. We're not talking individual farmers, but we're talking groups here. There may be individual farmers, but mainly we will have groupings of farmers, even if they operate as individuals, but they will be placed in clusters that can make meaningful production, and they can manage production resources. Like, for instance, if they have to buy machinery, the cluster should be able to host that machinery and manage it on behalf of the cluster.
Thank you so much for joining us on Market View, CEO. Siyathemba ukuthi sitawuphindze sikubone ka Market View lapho khona you will update us ukuthi engabe senisebenze kangakanani, sekhambe kangakanani, mangakhe ma farmers lesasitakele. Siyabonga kakhulu.
That's our business journalist Nelsiwe Ndlangamandla. They're spearheading our Enterprise Watch segment. Sanele Spear is in studio. We want to get into the markets today. Numbers are very, very jittery. We'll discuss all of it shortly. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back to the program. We are in our market analysis now, and Sanele Spear is already here in studio. Sanele, welcome to the program. I'm looking at the numbers, and today the story is quite interesting because there are sharp moves, there are shifting sentiments at the same time. It's a really, really jittery market, as it were. Right across the board, we're not talking about, NASDAQ down over 2%. Dow sleeping, the S&P is wobbling itself. What's at play here?
Good afternoon, Mr. Nimalo. Thank you for having me. So what's at play is Trump. We are approaching April 2. Remember those Canadian tariffs were actually pushed forward to April 2. And now, just yesterday, President Trump announced a 25% tariff on all vehicle imports into the U.S. And also remember that European Union story there, where President Trump threatened to put a 200% tariff on all wines and spirits coming in through from Europe after they retaliated to those steel impacts, to those steel tariffs. So that's why we're seeing those losses there in the U.S., purely because, in as much as the U.S. is the biggest consumer across the globe, but they also do import quite a number of those components, right? And when you are now bringing in these tariffs in terms of those vehicles, Chinese vehicles are actually taking up a lot of space, and quite a number of other vehicles are taking up a lot of space.
Absolutely.
And if you look at the the distribution of production, so essentially those General Motors, those Teslas, and every other vehicle in the US is made elsewhere. Only a few of them are made within the US. So we do fear that Trump's tariff policies are actually going to be inflationary, not just across the globe, but also to the consumer in the US. So that's why we are seeing those movements, and actually that tech-heavy NASDAQ has actually lost quite heavily, those 372 points, because remember, every automotive has a lot of tech in it, and when you speak Tesla, there's a lot of tech in it, and when you speak, self-driving cars, electric vehicles, so it's just that space where you know that President Trump is not going to move in very fast on those, because it did do away with that deadline for 2030.
So are you telling me, in short, that his decisions in terms of these tariffs, he's being very short-sighted?
Very.
Yeah.
Because there is no guarantee that those industries that he wants to bring back into the US are actually going to do that.
Yeah, okay, cool. Investors are clearly spooked. I think we are getting that sentiment. What's driving this sell-off? Because, we're looking at the inflation fears, as you allude. There's rate hike jitters as well.
Yes.
Something more structural happening here.
It's true, because what we're seeing as well is, those changes in the geopolitics of it.
Yes.
So that one is also playing in effect. And we do know that these policies not only are going to be inflationary, but they might drive, they will slow down global consumer sentiments and global economic growth. And more especially, we do know that the US is heading into a recession, and President Trump says it's going to be a transition. So we don't know how long that recession will last, and we don't know how every other country is going to react to these tariffs. So that the trade war is becoming worse than the wars that are physically on the ground. Yeah.
And because of one man. Now, the Eurozone is also on the radar here.
Yeah.
What should we expect here? Should we expect a domino to fall? What is happening?
Actually, the domino has already fallen. These are just the pieces that are now beginning to touch the ground because of those tariffs. Remember, if you look at Germany, they are the biggest, their biggest export is actually the automotives. It's the cars, it's the German machines going into the US. And now we know that's going to attract a 25% tariff. So it's going to make it 25% more expensive for a US citizen to own a German car. Same thing when you look at France, they do have those Citroëns, right? You look at London, there is those Land Rovers, those Jaguars coming out of those markets. So those markets are actually going to be quite affected, such that this tariff talk is also threatening the growth that we're seeing in Europe coming in through those defense stocks.
Yeah, and I wonder, the downstream effects of it all. Of course, there are factories in America, they are not making the cars, but they are selling them. What happens to the jobs there? The people, their jobs are threatened.
Indeed, they are. But the thinking around the Trump administration is, because the U.S. market is the biggest consumer market, then all those industries are going to shift back into the U.S. So ideally,
so they will adhere to whatever it is that he imposes. Let's get into mainland and perhaps everything else. I'm looking at the time.
Yeah. So if you look again in Japan, same story, the dominoes are falling. But the difference here is China is so used to this. They are used to the tariffs. They have ways around it.
And they're doing quite well in the tech sector.
Yeah, exactly. Doing quite well in the tech sector without any international support, without any American support. I mean, if you look at DeepSeek, it came out and they didn't have access to those high-end chips. Yeah. So you're looking at it. So that's why the mainland and the autonomous province of Hong Kong are staying on those positives, even though we are seeing that loss in Japan. Remember, Japan is an automotive-based industry, your Toyotas, your Hondas, your Suzukis. Then coming into South Africa, again, we are just about to touch that 90,000 mark. But yes, those trade war fears are also weighing in on the South African economy. But the push in the gold price is keeping the South African economy on that 89,000. So it's quite a balancing act. So domestically, we have not seen any changes. And when you come into the commodities, you see what we're talking about, Mr. Ngumalo. The gold really is going for records, because everything above 3,000 is actually a new record every day.
Unprecedented numbers, these.
Yeah, very much unprecedented. But when you look at crude oil, because of those Venezuelan tariffs, it seems crude oil is also taking a hit, though being a bit stronger. And when you come into the currencies, we are seeing a relative strength of the lilangeni against the dollar, because those trade wars are building in, and gold is becoming the most mined item right now, followed by copper, which are things that support the South African economy, and therefore we're seeing that upward surge. But against the euro, because of that defense spending, you know, just France promising another 2 billion to spend on defense and also to support Ukraine. So we're seeing that happen. And then also we are gaining a bit of strength against the Japanese yen, purely because we do expect Japan to be hit very hard by those tariffs, if and indeed they do come in on the 2nd of April.
Sanele, thank you so much for your time. It has been an insightful and a very sharp analysis per usual. Thank you so much to our viewers as well for always tuning in. This is the last episode of the week and certainly the last episode of the month, but the show goes on next week as we enter the new month. So enjoy this afternoon and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.